Blog Talk Radio.
Everybody, and welcome to the Women of Golf Show. I'm your host, Ted Odorico, and right here alongside each and every week is my great co-host, Cindy Miller, LPGA professional and Legends Tour player. Cindy, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you, Ted. It's great to be here.
We got a great show today for a couple of reasons. But before I sort of spill the beans, as it were, let me just remind everybody. Of course, we're live here every Tuesday morning, unless otherwise stated, from 9 to 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time here on blogtalkradio.com. Best way to find us is go to blogtalkradio.com and up in the search key type "Women of Golf," and that'll bring you right to the main page. And always on the Tuesday mornings during the live broadcast, the show that's currently broadcasting will be there up at the top. But for some reason, if you can't join us live every week, that's okay. Just go to that same link, and you can scroll down to the on-demand section, and it'll be in order of the most current shows will be down there, and you can listen to the recorded versions. Each show is, of course, recorded during the live broadcast, so just in case you can't tune in during that broadcast. Also, you can go to iTunes and go to itunes.com and type in podcast or into the podcast section, and also type Women of Golf, and you can get us there as well each and every week. To speak to either Cindy or I or any of the guests during our live broadcast, you can call into the number, area code 347-945-5855, or you can email comments or questions if you have them, pardon me, to womenofgolf@gmail.com. And, of course, if you're interested in coming on the show, maybe you're in the golf industry, whether you're a player or a teacher professional or maybe somebody in the industry that, you feel you have something that you'd like to share with the audience, we'd love to hear from you. You can reach out to Cindy Miller at cindy@cindymillergolf.com. And you can also reach out to her if you're interested in maybe working with Cindy and some of the great lessons and great teaching that Cindy, of course, does, as well as playing. She's all around just a phenomenal lady, and always glad to have her here each and every week. And if you want to reach out to me personally, you can do so at ted.golftalklive@gmail.com. Cindy, as I mentioned, we've got a great show this morning. We're going to be starting off here in just a few moments when she joins us with she's actually both an LPGA player as well as a Symetra Tour player. She's the current number one on the money list for the Symetra Tour, and that's Giulia Molinaro. She's going to be joining us here. And then we've got a really kind of an extra special surprise here. We're going to be joined by Kelly Miller Alicia, which is, of course, your daughter. Her and John Hollett from the Golf Channel are going to be joining us here a little bit later on.
Yes, isn't that nice?
Yeah, and of course,
it's Elijah.
My apologies. I should have put my glasses on. I guess I would have done it. Elijah, thank you. Anyway, she's going to be joining us here with John Hollett Jr., and they're both from the Golf Channel. Of course, your daughter is a feature producer at the Golf Channel, and John, of course, is in the post-production editing side of the Golf Channel. They're both, of course, based out of Orlando, Florida. But they're actually going to be calling in here in a little bit. They're actually in the process of editing something, I think you said earlier.
Yes, they are, and they will tell us the process and how that happens and how they pick features and highlights and what goes into the show and how they choose music and which shots go in and which shots do not. So it should be interesting.
Yeah, very good. Sort of a family week this week, if you will. Very excited to have both of them coming on here as well. Lots of different things going on in golf, and of course, I believe it was the Senior Men's Open that had just gone on here. I didn't get a chance, to be honest, to watch anything this past week, so unfortunately I can't talk intelligently about what happened in the golfing world this week, so I'll have to defer to you, Cindy. I don't know if you had a chance or if you were busy yourself, but always lots of interesting things going on, and of course, Tiger still continues to struggle with his game, and we certainly hope that he can find that sort of missing link, if you will, and get back on track. I'd love to see him be back to his competitive self. But what about yourself? What have you been up to this last week?
We did lots of lessons, and I, to be honest with you, did not get to watch any golf. So clearly, if you want to play golf, do not get in the golf industry. Yeah. Because you will be working in it and not playing in it.
Yeah, that's so true. And I can certainly attest to that as well. There's just always so much going on, and a lot of times it's even a struggle just to get out there and practice, when you've got a full plate, as it were. And Cindy, as I've said so many times, you're probably one of the hardest working women in the golf industry today, and I don't even know how you find the time to play.
I don't either. As I said to you, last Monday was the first 18 holes I had played and kept score since December. And so even though I hit 15 greens, though, because I've been practicing. And here, you know what, let's talk about that, because not everybody can practice. People have lives, and they have jobs, and they have families to take care of and things to do. So how can you make, the 10 minutes of, hitting 15 golf balls, if you will, or 25 golf balls a week help you improve? And the answer is, if you know what you're doing and you can focus on your process, you can really get pretty good results.
Yeah.
So,
right. And, something else, too, I think that can help. Sometimes it's not always a matter of hitting golf balls. I mean, ultimately you want to get out there and so you can see the results of what you've been working on. But sometimes, as you said, a lot of people have busy schedules. It's hard. If they've got kids, especially little kids, they can be a handful. And Cindy, I know you've gone through that in your process, having to juggle as a mom and wife and so forth. And it's very difficult sometimes. And then obviously as a teaching professional and as a player, as I said, you've got plenty on your plate. So how do they juggle that? How do we manage to get some of these golfers out there that want to improve but just don't have the time? What are some things that we can suggest?
Well, what I would do is I would interview a golf professional or some golf professionals to find someone that you believe you can work with that's a good match for you, for your personality, somebody who will push you but yet encourage you to get better. And when you find that person, I would sign up for a private lesson, and I would say, look, I don't have a whole lot of time, but example being, I need to play golf and use the game as a business building tool to build relationships and play with people. If that's the case, I would ask them to help you find one or two things that you can work on that will give you some confidence and some certainty so that you can go play and not be afraid. That and I would write it down. I would videotape it, and I would only focus on one or two things. And if you do that, then that's the only thing you're working on. And you know what? That little exercise might help you stay in the present moment, which will help you indeed get better.
Do you think also, too, and obviously everybody has their strengths and their weaknesses in their game, but do you think also that really if you are limited with time, let's say you only have 20 minutes a week, maybe 30 minutes a week to really sort of work on your game, where is the best time spent in your opinion? Is it, a lot of people are out there hitting balls, they're hitting their driver and that, but maybe is the better time spent on some of the short game areas like putting and chipping and pitching and that sort of thing. Is that better time spent, do you think, for those that have limited time?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And to know how to get the ball up and down.
Right.
You know, to be able to, get the ball up and down, really, and get it close to the hole, be able to one putt.
Yeah. And something, and Cindy, I know you've seen this probably a million times yourself. One of the things I always find interesting when watching, when you go out on the practice range and you watch, I'm an observer. I'm a visual person, so I like to sort of scan around and see what people are doing. And it's amazing. I'll see people out there literally for an hour, and all they're doing is hitting ball after ball after ball, and more often than not, they're hitting their driver. Some will start off with a few little pitches and things like that because they've been told or they've heard over the years that that's what the pros do. They start go up the different clubs, but they'll sort of rush through a lot of the clubs and not really spend time on that short game, and then they get up into the driver or their hybrids or what have you, and they'll spend the majority of their hour just hitting these balls, watching where it's going. And really, to me, if you've got that much time, I think you should kind of flip it around and spend the majority of your time, as you said, working on your short game and getting it up and down and getting it close to the hole. Because you can easily recover more often than not with a tight short game from an errant tee shot than the other way around. True?
Absolutely. And I don't believe they realize that. Everyone comes in and says, I have to hit my driver further. And I said, well, do you realize how many times you're going to hit your driver in a round of golf?
Yeah.
If you can hit your driver over 150 yards, it's only 14 out of 18 times. And if you two-putt every hole, it's 36. So, that's three times, almost, three times as many putts as drivers. But everybody wants that, ego boost, I guess.
Yeah. Well, I remember, and I don't know if it was on our show here or if it was the other one I do Thursday nights that I had mentioned this, but I remember years ago, I think this was when the Golf Channel first came out, and I cannot for the life of me, so I apologize, the gentleman's name, but there was a feature at that time, and I want to think the guy's first name was Wally, but again, don't quote me. But he did a segment which was very, very interesting. Of course, he was a professional, and he actually went and played three holes, a par 3, 4, and 5 consecutively. And he played it with a 7-iron, a pitching wedge, and a putter. And over the course of the three holes, he finished basically 1 under. And the point that he was trying to prove is, again, he was hitting at that time, and this is going back a few years, so, I mean, obviously distances are a little bit more now, but I think he was hitting a 7-iron, maybe about 150 to 155 yards. And even on a par 5, again, it was 450 change, I think it was. He was able to get there, of course, in 3 shots, but the point that he was making was you don't necessarily have to bomb in a mile. It certainly can be a benefit if you're accurate, but he wanted to prove a point that even with limited clubs, if you knew what you're doing and knew how to execute the shots and had some strategy behind it, you could shoot 1 under par.
Absolutely.
And it just goes to show you that a lot of people out there, I think this is really, Cindy, why so many people struggle with golf. I mean, there's so much great instruction, we've talked to some great people on here. We've talked to a number of players here over the course of the last couple of years, some very seasoned veterans and some young and up and comers. And what's interesting is that they're not talking about, well, I hit that drive or I hit my driver 300 yards. They're talking about the strategy and how they're sort of piecing everything together, and they're talking about their short game. In fact, the last few players, Cindy, that we've interviewed have all said the same thing, that they focus a lot on their short game, and that's why they're getting the success that they're getting.
Well, it goes from wanting to play, trying to improve, learning the skills, and then develop the strategy. So the strategy would be, how do I best play my next shot?
Yeah.
And once you're in the fairway, as long as you hit it far enough, it's funny that we're talking about this. I teach a young girl who's only been coming in for a year, never really played, and she's, in fact, her name on Twitter is Emma Warrior, okay? And so she kills the ball. I did a playing lesson with her last week, right before she was going to go play in a Hurricane Junior Golf Tour. And I looked at her. I said, I want you to look me right in the eyes. I said, you hit it far enough to play anywhere, but you're not smart enough yet.
Yeah.
And that's what you need me for. So, again, she went and played in a Hurricane Junior Golf Tour. She shot 94, 90 or something. You know, she's going to be a sophomore in high school. And it's like, okay, she now sees that she hits it far enough, but now we have to get smarter. So it's strategy. We need to be in the fairway so we can hit the shot on the green so we can make the putt. End of story. And if we do that, we play better.
Do you think that, though, really, in some ways that, and I might be wrong, but I think there's a certain element of truth to this statement that I think in some ways the industry has done itself a little bit of a disservice over the years, especially recent years, in really focusing on the driver. I mean, there's been so much effective market, and it has been effective marketing promoting, you know, these big drives, especially gearing towards the men's market. And I think what it's done is it's caused you know, the average golfer to really take the focus off the important parts of the game and focus on hitting these big drives. And of course, the egos, as you said, come into play. And I think that, you know, obviously, you know, hitting the ball and driving the ball is certainly an important part of the game. But as you said a few moments ago, you're really only using your driver on a few holes, and the rest of the time you're using, you know, your other clubs, particularly your shorter clubs. Do you think that maybe has added a little bit too, is sort of taken the focus off what people should be really spending their time on, and kind of, you know, creating sort of a false hope maybe is what I'm looking for.
Yeah, but you know what? That's good for the driver industry, so that, you know, people buy drivers and everybody wants to hit it far. So the manufacturers are, you know, playing with everyone's mind to let's hit it farther and better and straighter. When really, you know, guys that come in or women that come in, more men, you know, all I need to do is hit it 225 straight. So ones that have played long enough and have felt the pain, they realize they just, you know, there are consequences. And that's a beautiful thing about golf, you know. If you've played long enough, you get beaten into knowing what's the wise thing to do.
Yeah, I can concur with that. Well, and you know, the other thing too, Cindy, is you get a lot of, especially some of the older players, and it happens to all of us. I've noticed that, you know, certainly in my game, you know, I don't hit it as far as I did when I was in my 20s. I don't have the same energy that I did. You know, I try to keep myself in pretty good shape, and I'm blessed in the sense that I'm a tall person. I'm 6'4", so and a little bit lanky, so I can generate you know, some pretty good speed. But you know, unfortunately, age creeps up on you, and you just don't have the same energy. And you know, one of the common things I hear with some of the older players that come to me, you know, well, I want to hit it far. You know, I've lost, you know, 20, 30 yards, and how do I hit it farther? And you know, as long as they've got a good game already, then I think that's when the equipment can maybe offer some help. But when they're struggling in areas, what always gets me is you'll get a player that'll say those words, you know, I want to get 20, 30 extra yards, and you watch them hit a few balls, and they're left, right, you know, up, down, and they're all over the place. And it's like, you don't need a new driver. You need to be able to tighten up your pattern. And, you know, so a lot of times they focus on the wrong thing.
Yes, but that's what we're here for. So
that's right.
If they hit it good, we wouldn't have a job.
Yeah, that's right.
Every shot makes somebody happy, Ted.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. Somebody's becoming happy. Just a quick note. I'm not sure, and I don't know whether maybe there was some confusion in the time, but I'm keeping an eye out here for Giulia. I kind of suspect that maybe she got confused with the time, but we'll just keep going on, and if for some reason she doesn't end up joining us this morning, we'll try to reschedule her for possibly next week. But let's just continue on. What are some of the things that you do a lot of different camps, Cindy? I know that you've traveled quite often down to Florida during the year and that, and obviously you do a lot up in your home area of Buffalo. What are some of the key things that you really try to work on with some of your students?
You know what I'm doing? I'm trying to help people think smarter. And the number one question I ask them is, why are you here? And then, what do you want? And then I try to help them make smarter decisions and say, well, maybe we don't want that. Have you thought about it? Yep. Maybe you don't need to hit your driver farther. Maybe you want to score better. And they say, well, isn't that the same thing? And I say, no, it isn't. So do you want to hit it more consistently? Do you want to own your game, basically?
Right.
Do you want to be in control of what you're doing? And make realistic expectations. They all need to realize that everybody's working on something. And I make sure they're very aware that, you know, when I do some stuff on the tour, one of the questions I ask people is, you know, what are you working on? And as I mentioned to you, I was with Cheyenne Woods, you know, a couple of weeks ago and said, what are you working on? You know, I'm working on staying in the present moment and focusing on the task at hand. That is so important. And I believe that if we can help guide amateurs to realize that no matter how good someone is, they're always working on something, then they can say, oh, well, if they're working on something, then I need to be working on something. And maybe it's simplifying the solution, you know?
Yeah. Well, and do you find, and you certainly use yourself as an example, but do you find when you were a younger player compared to now being a more experienced player, do you find that the pattern has shifted to what you're focusing on? Like, for instance, and I'll give you an example, you know, a lot of younger players, of course, are focusing more on the physical part of the game. They don't really care so much about the strategy. Now, obviously, the more seasoned tour players and that understand and get what we're talking about certainly have a different perspective, and we've heard many of them talk about that. But did you find yourself, when you were first starting to play golf, that you were really more focused on just hitting that ball just perfect and getting all the angles right, and then now as you become more experienced in your career, that you're starting to realize that, sure, you know, hitting a straight ball or hitting a good shot is important, but there's other factors that come into play in becoming a good player?
Well, absolutely. And I believe that, first of all, I want to be comfortable out there. I don't like the little gerbil in my head, oh, look out, be careful, you don't have this shot. You know, I don't want to play that way anymore. I've done that, and it's not fun. So, And then I want to be clear about what are my thoughts. Again, you know, I'm a bit of a competitive control freak, so I need to be, control is one of my big words. I love being in control. I hate being out of control. So I am aware that that I need to be in control, and I need to know what I'm doing. And I can tell you that I've worked very hard on making the perfect swing, and that isn't going to happen. I need to be able to use the swing I have. And the skills that I've had, you know, from playing for a gazillion years, and say, look, all we need to do is hit the ball from here to there. You don't have to hit it perfect. You just have to make the ball go from A to B to C to D. So, yeah, absolutely. Have I changed? Definitely. And I believe that it's more peaceful, if you will, and you're more confident when you relax and don't try so hard and lower your expectations and say, wait a minute, I don't have to be Superwoman here. All I have to do is hit the ball from A to B. It's funny because when I played on tour, I was a scraper, you know, big scraper. In fact, I saw Worth Blackwelder. He caddies on the LPGA Tour. He's married to Myra Blackwelder, and their daughter Mallory Blackwelder plays on the LPGA Tour. And I just saw him at the KPMG. He said, oh, man, I'll never forget Mule talking about you when I first met you. That's Cindy Kessler. She'd be the best putter out here. And that's exactly the way he said it. So I said to Worth last week, or 2 weeks ago, I said, you got to say this. I got to audio tape it because it's too funny. And that's what I did. I missed it everywhere, but I got up and down. I putted like I was God. And so then I went from that to trying to have a perfect swing, and now I'm back to, you know what, it doesn't matter. Shut up and score.
Right.
So
right,
anyway.
Exactly. Cindy, I'm not sure if this is Giulia or not, but
no, I think it's Kelly Miller. I asked them to call in early.
Oh, okay. Well, that's perfect. Well, why don't we do this then and give them a little bit extra time. Let me just do a quick introduction here of both of them, and then we'll bring them online with us here. As I said, we'll try to reschedule Giulia. I think there's probably maybe been some confusion with the time zone or what have you. But as we mentioned earlier, we got two great guests coming on. Cindy's daughter, Kelly Miller Elijah, who is a feature producer at the Golf Channel, and she's going to be joined by John Hollett Jr., who is a post-production editor at the Golf Channel, both, of course, in the Orlando, Florida area, working out of that area for the Golf Channel. And let me just tell you a little bit more about Kelly, and then I'll subsequently talk about John as well. As I mentioned, she's a feature producer at the Golf Channel. She's produced features for Golf Channel, NBC Sports, and NBC. And in February of 2014, she was given the opportunity to be a producer for the 2014 Winter Olympics in Sochi. Her assignment was to produce daily features for Emmy Award-winning Jimmy Roberts. And Kelly started at the Golf Channel in 2007 and has covered, of course, the PGA Tour, LPGA Champions, and European Tour, and as well as a number of other various amateur events. John Hollett Jr., as I mentioned, is also going to be joining her. He's a post-production editor as well for the Golf Channel, and he's worked on such shows as in the Golf Channel, Live from School of Golf, Golf Fix, just to name a few. He's also edited on site for the Masters, U.S. Open, and PGA Championship, and he was the lead editor for the Emmy Award-nominated show and play with Jimmy Roberts. And John has over 15 years of experience in the television industry, which also includes videography and producing. So let's, without further delay, Cindy, let's bring both of them on.
Welcome, guys.
Hi.
Hello. Thank you for having us.
Are you guys on separate phones or the same?
Same.
Okay, perfect.
Not a problem. Well, guys, thank you very much for joining us. And Kelly, this is, I guess we'll call this Old Home Week since you're on here with your mother. That's always kind of interesting. And what a pleasure to officially meet you. I haven't had the opportunity to speak to you before, so thank you very much for coming on and sharing. And Cindy, I'm going to let you have the honors and start off with some questions.
Well, let me ask you guys, what are you editing today?
Today we are finishing up a couple vignettes that I cut for Golf Channel's 20th anniversary was this year. So every month we're doing a look back over the 20 years of Golf Channel and focusing in on an event or, the one that we just did today was for air in September on the Ryder Cup in 2012, the Miracle at Medina. So it's basically just a look back to celebrate the 20 years that Golf Channel has had. So we had one of our morning drive talent, Gary Williams, voice it last week for us, and so we are putting his voice on it, and it will get mixed, and then it airs in September. So we have a couple of those to do, and then we're going to be working on some Open Championship, which is what we call now the British Open. It's we call it the Open Championship now. So we're going to be working on some features for that week as well today.
Wow.
And are you allowed to tell us what those features will be about, or do you have to keep that under wraps?
One is on a young man who was voted the Volunteer of the Year over in the UK. He has cerebral palsy, and so he volunteers and then helps other children with disabilities over in the UK, and so we're doing a piece on him, and that should air the week of the Open Championship, either on Morning Drive or in our live from, and then we're working on a big Open Championship feature on Tom Watson. He is saying goodbye and farewell to playing in the Open Championship. He's a 5-time Open champion, so this will be his last go-around in competition at the Open, and it's at St. Andrews. So,
oh wow,
it's a big career type piece looking at his, career.
Wow, that'll be exciting to see, and hopefully Tom will do well on his final play. Let me ask you both, either one or both can answer this. Obviously, you get the opportunity to work with a lot of great players and volunteers as well. What have up to this point, and not including anything going forward, what have been some of the most interesting things that both of you had the opportunity to work on?
John, I'll let you go first.
Well, I can tell you that Kelly and I just got done working on several features for the U.S. Open, and mainly for the live from coverage. And we did a feature on Martin Keimer, very sort of an in-depth look at his wins last year. He won on Mother's Day at the Players Championship, and he won then again on Father's Day at Pinehurst. And we were able to sort of delve into his life. We do a lot of profiles like that where we're able to get sit-down interviews with these players, these top players in the world, and Kelly does a lot of the actual interviewing of the players, and then she brings all the footage back, and we make sense of it all. But it was a really telling feature on Martin Keimer and what his mother meant to him, and so what winning on Mother's Day was like. So that was a very, I think, one of the more interesting features Kelly and I have worked on recently.
That'll be, and now has that already come out? That hasn't aired yet, correct?
That aired during the U.S. Open. I think it might actually be online on golfchannel.com.
Okay.
We post a lot of our work there.
Yeah, it may still be on golfchannel.com. Normally, they post those pieces, the week of, and then they try to keep them up online. Depending if it has PGA Tour footage, which it does, I don't know our exact length of time they can keep them up on the website just because of licensing.
Sure.
And deals and stuff like that. But some of the pieces that we've done that don't have any PGA Tour footage, or stuff from the European Tour, RNA, or anything like that, a lot of that stuff stays up, indefinitely. There was a piece that I worked on in October and it aired in December on this little boy. His name is Tommy Morrissey. I know that's still up there because it doesn't have any PGA Tour footage whatsoever.
Right.
So just depending on licensing, it depends on how long that they're allowed to keep those features up online.
John, let me ask you a question. I know that Kelly majored in communications at the University of Buffalo. What did you major in college?
Oh, myself, yeah, I have a Bachelor's of Science in Broadcast Journalism.
Okay.
Wow. Very good. Now, how long, guys, when you're working on these projects, how much time ahead do you normally need to prepare for these? Now, I know you talked about just a few moments ago you're working on something that's not going to be coming out until September, so we're obviously still a few months away from there. But how much lead time do you normally get on a project, and do you have to sometimes juggle several projects and work on several projects at a time, or is it sort of a one-on-one? And Kelly, either John or either one.
It's definitely multitasking to its finest. There's so many pieces, even just now, that I know of. Let's just say this Tom Watson piece that we're working on, I've known about this piece since January, and we've been, we actually just sat down with Tom last week at the Men's Senior Open in Sacramento, but just even setting up an interview with, a legend like that, and takes time, and dealing with, their people. When can our talent go out? Sometimes they just send a producer like myself out, and I'll do the interview. Last year I did 2 big pieces that encompassed with Curtis Strange, and I did the interviews. We had an hour with him to talk about stuff for the Masters, and it was the 20th anniversary of him winning back-to-back U.S. Opens last year. And I just did the interview. Whereas, this one we wanted to try to get, we were able to incorporate talent with that. Sometimes it doesn't work out with anyone's schedule, and, producer just has to go and, do the interview, which is fine. I mean, we do tons of interviews anyway, but to coordinate all of that, and, right now we're working on stuff for PGA Championship, or these, there's definitely other pieces, too, that just come up out of the blue. We worked on a little piece, John and I, on Ron Balicki, who was a golf writer and he was a golf writer for Golf Week for a long time, and he passed last year. And so, they wanted to do a little memorial piece for him, which we only had like a week and a half to do. So, I had to get, it might have been about 2 weeks. So we needed to get some sound from PJ Tour players. So I had to email field producers who were out at events to try to track down a Luke Donald or a Brant Snedeker. Luke was playing in Europe and Brant was playing in the U.S. So, they had to help us out and try to get sound from these guys and interview with some writers. And, that's all going on at once, as I'm also working on U.S. Open pieces and Open Championships. So there's a lot that goes on, but there are pieces like that where, and then, it was very quick turnaround. So John actually does some shooting himself, was able to shoot. We got some stills that we got from, the Balicki family, which was totally gracious of his wife. And, he was able to shoot them for us and put them in the piece, So that piece I know probably definitely still lives online because it doesn't have any PJ Tour footage. It's all stuff that we, kind of just shot and got together. But that was something that we had to put together. I wrote it. We had a talent voice it over. We cut it, and then, it aired, within 2 weeks, which is still actually a good amount of time. It's not ideal for something that is going to be, where I need to get a bunch of sound from a bunch of different players and different spots, but, it worked out. So that's good.
Yeah. So you're very good at spinning plates.
Yes.
Yeah, 2 weeks sometimes sounds like a long time. Like last night I worked for the Golf Central show, and we had to do a recap of Bubba Watson's win at the Travelers Championship, and we had 2 hours to edit it, and it was a 90-second piece, and it involved graphics, it involved Bubba Watson's press conference, it involved the highlights from his win, and we had to really kind of put together it was called In His Own Words, something new that Golf Central's trying, and it's very involved, but again, 2 hours to edit it and get it to air. 2 weeks is sometimes actually a luxury.
Wow. Yeah, I can just imagine. And obviously, as I said earlier, you both get to work on some really phenomenal projects, and it's obviously very exciting. But I imagine there's times, and I think you were kind of alluding to this, that it can be somewhat overwhelming as well when you've got so many, as Cindy had mentioned, so many plates spinning. How do you sort of keep it all together? How do you, obviously I'm sure technology helps. You don't have the old storyboards like they used to have years ago, but now you have technology to sort of help. But how do you keep it straight? You're working on multiple projects. How do you prevent yourself from getting sort of overwhelmed and confused with the different things that you're working on? Or you? I hear laughter in the background, so obviously you don't.
Well, I think it all comes down to, as much as you try to, I have a calendar next to my desk, so I really try to keep track of what's coming up, what needs to be done, what's priority. So let's say, for example, last week, earlier, leading up to the U.S. Open, and then, it wasn't last week, 2 weeks ago, leading up to the U.S. Open, we were cutting features that we had known about, and we were working on. But then, once that Wednesday hit, and Thursday morning, John was editing with me in the morning. We were cutting teases daily, and these Feinstein essays where John Feinstein is a contributor for Golf Central and Livefront, and he would write these essays that basically just cover in video, kind of telling a story. And so we had to cut that stuff morning of, day of, in 3 hours, and it airs. And so, at that point, I stopped thinking about, okay, what else do I have, to cut that's on my plate for later next week. It's everything goes to that moment, and let's get all the video. Let's get, where's the best video, where's our best beauties, and, stuff of Seattle or whatnot, and then you focus on that. And then with weeks that aren't like that, where we're not cutting for daily stuff, you know, I just try to be like, what's the next piece that airs? What else, you know, kind of organizing what step needs to go next to get this next thing done. Do I have to write a feature? Do I have to have interviews done? You know, do we need to get this logged? You know, it's basically just trying to really keep things organized. And, you know, there's been times where there's not enough edit time in our day so that, you know, sometimes somebody else does have to help out, you know, a PA or whatever, you know, to help get something done because there isn't enough time to get, you know, to finish everything. But a lot of times, you know, that's just a, you know, last straw type of thing. But normally, you know, we just really try to keep everything organized and know when things are supposed to air. You know, get a script as soon as possible once we have all the logs and everything that you know that you need, you know, to write a piece. And sometimes, like for this Tom Watson piece, we're going to have some of these stills shot, which we're not going to get until, you know, late next week sometime, and we edit all next week. So it's kind of just leaving a space for that, getting everything done up until that point, you know, and then that way, organization. And I think being here for 8 years now, you just kind of learn a little bit of how to organize it and what has priority and what can take a backseat burner.
Do you find that obviously you have to have some checks and balances in place? Do you ever find that there's, and I'm sure this has had to have happened. If not, then you're a miracle worker. But has there ever been a situation where you've been working on something and you've obviously forgot or overlooked something, and you're kind of in the crunch time, if you will, and it's kind of like, oops. What do you do in a case like that when you're sort of caught off guard and maybe you've overlooked or forgotten something? Has that happened to either one of you in your areas? And if so, how do you get around that? How do you work through it?
Yeah, I mean, you mean in terms of like, say, well, I can tell you there isn't a feature that goes by where a producer doesn't say, God, you know, I wish I would have shot that. I wish I would have got that shot. I wish I would have. There's a lot, you know, the hindsight 20/20 deal. I mean, it comes into play every time we edit. But you know, we will persevere. You know, we'll find more of the best material. I mean, we have thousands of hours of footage at our disposal here at Golf Channel. I mean, we're not we're not at a lack of footage by any stretch. I mean, a lot of the features that we cut, we deal with original footage that was shot just for that feature. And sometimes we might not have the perfect shot. We find ourselves digging into our library sometimes to make do. But Kelly's very resourceful to have having the 7 and 8 years here. That helps us a lot because she has a very good knowledge of our library, and that as a producer is extremely helpful to myself as an editor, because then when we are in a pinch like that, she can say, oh, I did a feature 4 years ago, and we just happened to, we're missing a beauty of, a certain golf course. We can dig into our archives and pull a shot up and have it brought into the piece. So we can make do. We like I said, we have so much footage at our disposal that if there are a couple holes in the field production, we fill them pretty quickly.
Wow.
And a lot of times when we're on a shoot, you make phone calls before and you go out and you only have a day or two sometimes when you're out, doing a feature, let's say something outside of just, covering the golf that's going on. And, when you're out there and then something may come up in the story that you didn't know about or you didn't realize. So certain things, there was a piece in particular where I did a piece in last fall, and it was concentrating on this thing called Dream Flight. And it was Ian Poulter is a big contributor to raising money and having they fly over 192 kids from the UK and Scotland and all over over there, and they come over and they get to go to Disney and Universal, and everything's paid for. And so basically we wanted to do a feature again this fall. So, we were able to go out on the tarmac when this huge, double-decker plane flew in from British Airways, and, there's only so much. We couldn't get into the parks with them. So I went with my cell phone, and I shot some stuff, and we okayed it with the park afterwards, but we couldn't get a crew in there. And one of there's a place called Discovery Cove here in Orlando. They allowed us to have a crew there and go out with, we went out and shot some stuff. But then one of the girls that was a volunteer who had been an athlete and who had attended Dreamflight when she was younger, was a Paralympic athlete who actually won a gold medal in Beijing. We centered the piece kind of around her and her experiences of what she can teach these younger kids. Well, at the end of it, I wanted to tell a little bit more of her story, which that wasn't really the story in the beginning, but she lives in the UK, and there's only so much time because their schedule is so packed when they're here with the kids. We didn't have time to take her to a pool and get her swimming in a pool. We didn't have, I wanted to see if she could give us some photos of her growing up. She was very close with her mother, who ended up unfortunately passing before she was able to compete in Beijing, before she won the gold medal. And so, dealing with her, I would email her, and she was able to give me photos, but I was like, gosh, I wish I had her swimming, actual specialty footage of her swimming. And that's something we couldn't do that when they were here for this piece. So we actually were able to get, a crew over in the UK. I was able to set up with, the crew over there and get her specialty footage, of her in a pool, swimming, slow-mo and whatnot, and, really recreate a little bit of her swimming. And then it's like, oh, well, she won the gold medal. Normally we can't license any of that footage because it is Olympic footage, but I was like, we really, really need this, and, we need this for it, and that's something we couldn't have shot at that point, but we were able to get that from NBC, and the Paralympic Committee was able to give that to us for a very, very, very low cost, and we ended up making that work. And the whole piece began with a plane flying. We didn't have specialty footage of that. I was able to purchase it off Revo stock. So all these things were, in the beginning, you're like, we don't have this, we don't have this, we don't have this. Well, how can we get that? How can we make it work? Even we don't have what we would really want, here's a different way that we can, make it work. And then, the piece, you would never have known that watching it. All the hoops that we had to jump through to get, all those footage, everything to come together, but then it does in the end.
Wow.
That's awesome.
Go ahead, Cindy.
And that it's almost like stop, drop, and roll. What do we do to make this work? So, John, let me ask you, because I happen to know my daughter, and I taught her to be a very good plate spinner.
Yep. Loaded question coming.
Yeah, that was the warning. Did you catch that?
Yes.
So, makes a good producer.
Say it again?
Sorry, you broke up a little bit. What was that?
What makes a good producer?
One that does not yell at me. One that brings me Starbucks.
I did that.
Your daughter brings me Starbucks, which is next level. It's the little things as well as the big things. I mean, what really makes a great producer is someone who is very organized coming into edit and is very confident in the edit. Very decisive, editing is sort of a very precise art. We stay in these dark rooms every day, 8, 9, 10 hours a day, 50, 60 hours a week sometimes, and we really need our producers to come in prepared, and a lot of times with a script and with a vision. And, I mean, I not just because she's on the phone and she's sitting right next to me and she's your daughter, but she's very good at coming in, prepared. She knows what she wants, which makes it easier for me to do my job, because a lot of times I have producers that don't have a vision and lean on me to help. So, and sometimes that's a good thing.
Yeah.
But we try to collaborate as much as we can. I mean, Kelly's very open to suggestions. That's probably another big thing is the flexibility and actually listening to the editor, and not just using me to push buttons. She's very good at collaborating. So I would say those are, if I were to pick the top three, those would probably be the biggest things. But your daughter's exceptional, and being resourceful, like I said earlier, knowing what you have, and being able to find the right footage. Kelly's worked with Jimmy Roberts a lot out in the field, and Jimmy Roberts writes a lot of essays, and he will just write, and he'll write about whatever, and he'll expect Kelly to find the footage and get it on air sometimes that day on NBC's Sports Air, and she has to somehow figure out ways to either find still photos or video or contact local news agencies. I know she did a piece during the Players' Championship. She had to reach out to all these different people in a very short period of time. Being resourceful and being aggressive definitely helps. And Kelly's got all those in her bag of tricks.
So Kelly, now that was pretty nice, John. I don't have to pay you for that, do I?
That was some. I would say that was some great editing, John.
Yeah, I had that pre-recorded. I just hit play.
So now my question to you, Kelly, because you talked to me, we're buds, and you suggested that I have John on with you today because you love working with him. What makes a great editor?
I think, too, is, I have an idea. Like, a lot of times, let's say, like yesterday, I didn't have the opportunity. I wasn't scheduled with John. So today, it's, okay, what are we working on today? So, we come in, I talk to him about it, and even bouncing off ideas from him, because I'm only as good as what my idea is or what I know. He's got a plethora of knowledge and stuff that he has so many other ideas that I don't have. And there's so many different things of, hey, let's do this. Or, hey, and I'm so open to that because a lot of people wouldn't be, and then they don't, you're only going to get so good of a piece. So, even having him go, and there's certain things that he just does automatically. Like, I don't even have to talk to him, and he just does it. And it's so easy to work with him, and just, being open, too, because there's so many great ideas that, or if I'm, hey, we're going to cut this piece, like today we're going to work on just looking at some of this footage and some of these still photos that we're going to shoot is, hey, what's a great idea? How should we shoot these? He has much more stuff that he's done that I haven't even done. So he may have done something in the past where I wouldn't even think of that, and then that really helps to collaborate and make a better piece. Yeah.
Well, and knowing that you're working together as a team.
Yeah.
Which is only going to make a better piece. Then could you both win an Emmy? Would you both get an Emmy if you created a piece together?
If a piece, yeah, because, John was nominated for the show In Play, and that was a piece that he worked on, and the producer, everyone that was a part of that, was nominated. So, yes, if it's for a piece and stuff like that, and then he can also do something for just editing, right? Yeah. So, he can submit a piece that he's done just for editing, and then in that thing, I wouldn't. But, certain things, yes, anyone that's a part of working on that piece, if that piece is nominated, then yes, you would be
nominated as well.
All part of it. Yeah.
Yeah, it kind of depends on the category there.
Yeah.
But yeah.
Let me jump in and just ask a non production question. Do both of you play golf? And if so, what areas do you struggle with?
I do play golf. I have played since I was a wee baby. I'm not very I am not very good, but I can make pars and birdies, but I can also make eights and just pick up the ball also. So I would say my short game is the worst, but I can also hit the miraculous shot and pull off some great shots. So but I just like to have fun. I don't like keeping score a lot, but I will say last summer I did shoot 87, and I don't practice. So that and
Wow.
I counted everything. So that was actually pretty good for me.
That's fantastic.
And tell them that you won the Golf Channel tournament, didn't you guys? A couple years
No, we
ago?
didn't win. It was a girl group because we just like to have fun. We don't care. And we shot 10 under and came in third out of teen groups of all guys.
And that's the
So
Golf
our girl
Channel
group
next,
came in.
the annual tournament. So that's a big deal because there's some real players in there. And so
Yeah.
everybody was shocked at this team of girls that don't know what they're doing and don't really care.
Yeah, I made
John-
2 putts for birdie from 20 feet.
Wow. John, what about yourself?
How about you?
I tell you, I always say there's a reason why I work on this side of the camera, which means not in front of the lens. So you won't see a lot of highlights out of me. I do enjoy getting out there. I've had the opportunity to play a lot of really cool golf courses. I mean, working for Golf Channel, and I used to work for the PGA Tour. I've had some opportunities to play some amazing courses, and I try to shoot in the mid 80s. I'm definitely not under par by any stretch of birdie. If I make a birdie, that's usually like a big deal for me. I might drink a beer after that. But yeah, birdies are few and far between. I'm working on consistency. I think I'm too methodical. Being an editor, I don't know if that lends too well. Plus, we do so many instructional shows here, and you hear all these tips. So when I stand over the ball, I'm just I don't know what I'm doing. I've got 75 tips going through my head. So,
I can
sometimes
just see it.
Yeah. Sometimes too much information is Hey, let me ask both of you, and Kelly, we'll let ladies go first on this question. I just one of our final questions here because we're getting close to time. But obviously, you have an opportunity working with the Golf Channel and that to meet some phenomenal people in the industry. Who are a couple of players or people in the golf industry that stick out in mind that you really admire and we're really excited to work with? And then also, is there anybody in the industry that you haven't had the opportunity to work with or interview that you'd like to interview? And then, John, the same for you.
I would say, working-wise, to be able to work with Jimmy Roberts with NBC was definitely a dream come true and nothing that I ever thought that I could do. And that just came out of the blue one day. They needed somebody to cut, some essays for them for NBC's telecast, and then that kind of worked into a working relationship where, I had cut some stuff, he liked what I did, and then to be able to work with him at the Olympics was a dream come true. I would never have, guessed that would be possible. So working with him, and player-wise, it's different because I think I've been out there so much where we're out there with the players, and it's not, oh my gosh.
Right.
I would say one person, the Curtis Strange interview that I did, because I'm not a talent, you don't see my face. You're not, the players, they'll recognize me and you'll say hi at certain events just because I've been out there so much, but they're not going to be like, hey, be as open to me as they would if I was on the air, because they don't
Right.
see your face. So Curtis was super duper. He was amazing and so open and got emotional. There's not, golfer wise, I don't know if there's somebody that I'd be like, oh, I really need to. I've had the great opportunity to meet, Mr. Palmer, Jack Nicklaus, Tom, all these great players. Being around Tiger Woods, he says hello. There's not somebody, I think it's just, I've been around the golf so much that I probably take it for granted because, not a lot of people
Right.
can say that. But I would say work-wise, I'm not sure who I would want to work with. Being at the Olympics was definitely a really cool experience. But I know that we're running low, so let me give it to John.
Right.
I would say we did a show with Mr. Palmer Mr. Palmer, Jack Nicklaus, and Gary Player, the big three, and they held a golf tournament, and they raised $10 million with this one golf tournament, and they donated it all to a local school, the Mountain Mission School in Grundy, Virginia. And being a part of that and seeing that golf tournament happen and being a part, I was out in the field for that, and then I got to edit the show. That was probably working with those three guys was definitely a highlight, and to see them raise $10 million and we spent a week with these kids at the school to see the money go back to the school. I definitely say that was one of the bigger highlights of my career.
Wow, fantastic. Yeah, you guys obviously have an opportunity to meet a lot of great players and people in the industry, and as you both indicated, have an opportunity to work with some phenomenal people in your line of work as well. If there was one thing, and I'll let each of you have a quick moment, and then Cindy, I'll let you have the last question. Is there something that you would really like to see done on the Golf Channel that maybe hasn't been done? In other words, if you could create your own sort of special feature or special thing, is there something that you would love to see come out there in the next little while? Kelly, go ahead.
I would say the way that we're going a little bit is trying to tell stories that you may not have heard of, and we're trying to go, and I mean there is all these, it's major championship season is what we call it. So once the Masters starts all the way till the end of the PGA Championship and really the President's Cup, we're going strong, doing features and stuff for that. But in between there, we're trying to push to do these heartfelt, feel good stories that you normally wouldn't hear or see, even if it has just a little tie to golf. It doesn't have to, it's not, this person's a professional golfer, let's do a story. No, if there's even just the smallest tie. And so, we are going in that direction. And I just think that is something that, I like the fact that, we're working that way, because even if it just has a tiniest small tie to golf, that's something that we can tell some really great stories that way. So I feel like we're starting to go that way, and I can't wait for us to be able to tell some more stories.
Fantastic. And John, what about you? Is there anything that you'd like to see, or you kind of concur with what Kelly just said?
No, yeah, we're definitely working on our storytelling. I mean, I'm not going to lie. I would love to do the full-on Tiger Woods story. I know I would just love to be a part of that. For him to let us into his world, and he's not really known for being friends with the media. I would love to see him sort of drop that veil and let us in. I think the viewers would want to see it. I worked for the PGA Tour when Tiger was winning, back in 2004, all the way through to 2010, and he was dominating our sport. So now, it's kind of changed. The landscape's changed a lot. And more stuff on the younger guys too. I'd love to do a show on Jordan Spieth. I think that too. I think the viewers would love to see that. You try to think in terms of what viewership would want to see, and I know that obviously those are two of the biggest names in the sport.
Sure.
And alongside Rory McIlroy, I think we need to do more with players, big name players too. It's so hard though, because they're very difficult to get for an interview, much less to do a show.
Yeah, I can imagine. Cindy, I will let you have the final questions or thoughts.
I really don't have any questions. I thank you guys for being on with us. You gave us some good insight into what really happens behind the scenes and how things get created to be delivered to the masses that watch and love and play the game of golf. So I thank you so much, and thanks to the Golf Channel for permitting you guys to open up to us a little bit.
Thank you for having us.
Yes, thanks a lot for having us. I really enjoyed it.
Yes, thank both of you. And let me just, in my final thought to both of you, I know that you're struggling a little bit with your golf game, and I know that I can think of a great professional in the business that you can connect with, and her name is Cindy Miller. I think she can help both of you with your golf game, Kelly and John. Thank you very much for joining us on the Women of Golf show. We appreciate it very much, and I concur with Cindy. Some great insight and a lot of things that I didn't know about some of the things that you're doing, and continue the great work. And we'd love to have you guys come back and join us another time.
Thank you very much.
Will do. Thank you.
All right. Have a great day.
You too.
Bye.
All right.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Wow, what a great partnership there, if you will, at the Golf Channel. That they're obviously both doing some great work, and very, very interesting, isn't it?
It is. It's interesting to learn how it all works. The stuff that you don't see, but you see when it's done.
Yeah, exactly. And obviously a lot of hard work and preparation has to go into getting these great features out. And obviously your daughter Kelly and her partner there at the Golf Channel and NBC, John Hollett, do a great job in getting some of those stories out there. We look forward to seeing what they have for us in the future. And on that note, Cindy, we have to say goodbye to everybody, but we want to thank each and every one of the listeners out there and all of the supporters of the program. And our apologies, we're not sure what happened to Giulia Molinaro, but we'll try to reach out and get her possibly for next week, or if not, on another show. But we want to thank all of you for tuning in each and every week. Don't forget to go to blogtalkradio.com and type in Women of Golf up in the search key. And if you happen to miss the live broadcast, or you're tuning in here at the last moment and you missed the earlier part of the show, you can go back in here in just a few moments, and the recorded version will be available in that catalog. And if not, and if you have joined us and you want to hear some of the previously aired broadcasts, you could just scroll down through the on-demand section. But on that note, on behalf of Cindy Miller and I, we want to thank all of you and our special guest today, Kelly and John, for joining us. And again, thank all the listeners from around the world for tuning into the broadcast. We will see you next week here on the Women of Golf. Thanks, and God bless everybody. Have a great week, Cindy.
Thanks, you too.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.